Space, the final frontier. Well, okay, not really. All right, take two. Here in the Mitten State, welcome to Code 47, bringing you all things Star Trek, spanning the quadrants, the best thing since the neutral zone.
We're back again with your It's Just a Coincidence holiday edition of Code 47 on the Secret Friends Unite podcasting network. This is episode 115. We are recording on Christmas Eve, which again, as I said, is entirely inconsequential to what we're going to talk about, but Jen has a hat on anyway, which means she gets to be the person who gets introduced first. Our trekker from the Windy City, Jen Watson, joining the forum as usual. Jen, hello, how are you? Merry Christmas.
Hello, Merry Christmas.
All right, and then going to my left, my middle left, is the captain of the USS Rhapsody down there in Southwest Michigan, Mr. Aaron Heminger. Aaron, how are you?
I'm doing great. Hi, everybody.
All right. And all the way over on the left, decked out in that absolutely gorgeous the pilot version of the TOS uniform, my chief engineer on the USS Grand Petoskey, Mr. Peter Stein. Peter, Merry Christmas to you.
Merry Christmas.
All right. Well, we're going to do a fun one today. Last episode, we were obviously talking about our, choice castings if Strange New Worlds takes its assembled casting of the TOS characters, if they added on to them. And now we're going to talk about what would come next after that. But before we do that, I'm going to pay homage to our fantastic friends over on our Secret Friends Unite Patreon. These are the folks who contribute to us financially and, of course, spiritually and emotionally to give us the capacity to do our additional Patreon content. Both Jen and Peter have worked with me on The Facts of Geek Life, which is my program where we take a classic season and of a classic show and a handful of episodes and break them down and have a good time. Aaron, we've got to get you in the mix at some point, so we'll have to talk about an old show that you love and get you in there. So we will cover that off book. But anyway, on the Friends with Benefits level, as always, we have Corey in HD, John Sedorf, the awesome Phoenix Sisters cosplay, Brendan Myers, and new additions, the Asian Sith Mistress, but an even newer addition and getting some special recognition this week is Mr. Matthew Keel. Matt is a longtime contributor to the Secret Friends Unite Prime podcast. He was on recently with Mark and with Todd over on Co-op Mode, where he joined up. But because he's a member of the squad, and I gave my people just, 30 minutes to come up with something, he does get a Star Trek race, and he gets a Star Trek job. So I'm going to start at my extreme left, and I'm going to say, Peter, go first. Give Matthew a Star Trek race and a Star Trek job.
All right, I decided to go for something a little bit unusual. I'm going for a Benzite, because why not?
A little breather.
And the deep space sensor operator.
Gotcha. Down there poking and not following the rules. Like, what was it?
Get to see all the things that are far, far away.
Mordon or Mordak. It was the dude in the TNG played by the same dude.
Yep.
But they had the most TNG explanation. Wesley walks up to him and says, "Oh, I thought you were the name of the first character." "No, he's my cousin," or some shit. I don't know what it was. We're from the same birthing pod, which sounds gross. But anyway, Aaron.
For species, I'm going to have to go with, just because I think it would be really fun to see one trying to integrate into Starfleet society, I'm going to go with a former Q member who's been turned human. I think that would be a fun one to see. And for job, I'm still hung up on Cetacean's water ops management. I don't want to say, intergalactic pool person, but, I think that would be a great job.
He's the pool guy. I love it. Good deal. All right, Jen.
Let's go with Trill.
Oh.
Joined or unjoined, your choice. And you can join me in the transporter room.
I love it. I'm going to go with Cation. And then I'm going to go with a security chief, because you see how scrappy, a male security chief, because he's male. So we'll see a male Cation. I don't know that we've really bumped into one that's had a speaking part. But yeah, security chief. So just as grumpy as Dr. Tana on Lower Decks, but now with Worf's job. So get to, instead of just being cranky and, yelling at people and using much curse words, actually gets to slap people around. So good deal. Well, Matthew, welcome. To my recollection, I don't know that you're much of a Trekker, but hopefully you will give this a nod. I'll give a shout out on the Patreon and perhaps some of our social medias to alert him that he should be listening to this on Christmas Day. All right. And finally, on our BFFs level, our top tier of Patreon, we have the awesome Nias family of the Twin Cities, Sean, Stella, and Henry, and friend of the show and friend of many of us here, Missy Merchant. All righty, right. Well, one little piece of news, which I didn't, it's more of an announcement than it is a news story, but again, today is the 24th, Christmas Eve. Tomorrow is Christmas Day. For those who celebrate, you may be listening to this, but probably listening later in the week. But over on Netflix, this has been news for quite some time. Star Trek Prodigy season the first, I'm assuming in its entirety, will be available to you who have never seen it, who would like to see it again, who didn't jump on the bandwagon of snapping up a copy of it once it got ghosted from Paramount Plus back in the summertime. So yeah, it'll be there for you. And I would imagine as we get into the new year that we will be getting a pretty prompt announcement for season 2. So opinion question. I'm not sure if we covered this before. What are your guys' school of thought on the way Netflix usually drops things? Because they'll drop, blam, here's everything. Or are they going to go more the episodic route? Because I feel like Netflix releases have gone in both directions. As far as dropping everything at once or going weekly episodic. But Star Trek has never gone with a huge drop like that unless I'm misremembering something. So, Peter, what do you think? Which direction do you think they'll go in?
I think they'll stick with the episodic.
Okay.
Not with launching season 1 necessarily, just because it's already been out.
Yeah.
But with the new release of season 2, I think they'll go episodic. They might do what they've done before, where it's like, the first 2 episodes at the same time, just so you can be like, ooh, there's an extra hook. But
right.
I think they'll go episodic, if only because Star Trek has always done that.
Right.
And then they can, drag out interest and therefore viewers for a couple extra weeks.
Right. All right. Aaron, what do you think?
They do tend to. Netflix is really weird because they'll release in batches, but they'll do it in a way where they'll if it's a 7-episode series, they'll release 6 episodes, and then 2 months later they'll release the last episode.
Oh,
they're real big. Yeah. I can't stand it when they do that. I just don't understand. They've done it to me so many times. But I think the smart play is to release it 1 episode at a time because I don't understand how you make money releasing it in batches. Because you get people coming back every week and you get more viewers and everything for a longer commitment.
Right. Exactly.
So I think that's a smarter play.
Especially with how competitive streaming has become and how it continues to be more and more competitive with big mergers and stuff like that. That's another piece. Whoops, look at me, Mr. Prepared. There was a rumor this week that the folks at Max are talking to the folks at Paramount Plus about a potential merger. We'll save talking about that until there's more news, but I can tell you that doesn't really excite me. But anyway, Jen, what are your thoughts?
I hope they do it episodically. I don't think that that's going to happen because it's Netflix and they don't do that.
Right.
Ideally, maybe they'll split the difference because, that's sort of what Paramount did. They released them in 5-episode chunks to begin with. It was still weekly.
Right.
But you had 5 and then 5 and then 10, because it was broken up by all the other releases.
Right.
I agree that releasing stuff weekly is better for the fans and better for the streaming company because you do have a longer commitment of people and you also prolong some of the discussion between releases. So
no, I definitely
fingers crossed.
Yeah, I definitely think that's the biggest part. Well, cool. Well, we will find out about that as we said we get into the new year, and then we look at hopefully as things start to continue to shape up. We know Strange New Worlds is in production right now for season 3, and one would hope that within certainly the first quarter of 2024 we would get something a little more solid on when we would expect to see that. Okay, well, we're getting into our segment 1 where we're continuing the conversation about Strange New Worlds -TOS. So last week, with the help of special guest Todd Oxtra, we all did our fan casting on what it would look like to have additional roles cast for McCoy, Sulu, Rand, and Chekhov. But now I said, hey, what if we then tilt into the series itself? And over the next 3 episodes, we're going to take on each of the 3 seasons of the original series. We're leaving out TAS. Sorry. We don't need to revisit that just yet. It was painful enough when we did it, in my opinion.
And that's what Lower Decks is for.
Yeah, that is what Lower Decks is for, to decide what's canon and what's not. That works for me. Because Gene Roddenberry always hated, much like Lucas hated the Star Wars Holiday Special, Gene Roddenberry had a somewhat similar vibe when it came to the animated series. Necessary evil, but ultimately, threw it under the bus when he had a chance. But anyway, we're going to look at the first season of the original Star Trek. Now, we are excluding The Cage, as it was the unaired pilot, despite Peter's fantastic outfit. We're excluding The Cage for the time being. But we're each going to choose 2 episodes, and we'll go in kind of a round-robin fashion, that we would prioritize if TOS Season 1 was remade in, let's say, a 10-episode season. So by the end of this, we could have half of that and more than half of that in the bag. Because who knows what that would really look like. But once it's recast, if they move forward into a streaming model of 10 episodes or 12 episodes or whatever it is, maybe they want to remake, maybe they want to do new, maybe they want to do a mix of the two. But anyway, here's our take. So I'm gonna go counterclockwise this time. So I'm gonna go first and kind of set the stage. I know, look at me. It's good to be the king, right? I'm going to pick my first of 2. And again, if this happens to be one of your guys's as well, just jump in. We'll talk about it together, and then we'll continue to move forward. So, Jen, did you have a question? I saw your mouth open like you were going to say something.
No.
Not so much. Okay, very good. All right. So my first pick, season 1 of TOS, episode 6 is The Naked Time. I like, and again, this was spoofed, I think, in a much less successful fashion early in TNG. I mean, The Naked Now,
Yeah,
which was
episode
2. Yeah, episode 2 or 3, because episode 3 was the one on the Africa planet. So we let's hope we don't get that one until we down the road start doing the series again, because that's neither one of those are pleasant to talk about. But anyway, back to The Naked Time. Why I picked this? I thought the episode, super early on, was a real crash course in learning about the core identities of a lot of our real critical characters, shortcomings, fears, whatever it is, because of this Psi 2000 virus. And again, if you're not familiar with the episode, either one of them, Enterprise is visiting a planet. They come upon a science station where, crew members died in somewhat weird and unexplained fashion. One guy taking a shower with his clothes on, and just a bunch of weird stuff happening. And one of the crew members, who he's great with his OSHA policy, takes the glove off of his spacesuit and he's touching something, and you see this virus literally jump onto his hand, and it's like a trickle of orange goo goes bloop, and then he takes it back to the ship, and as it gets around, everybody just gets, it goes into the blood, as McCoy explains it later on in the episode, goes into the bloodstream like alcohol and makes everybody act like they're drunk. You get drunk, you get emotional, you get honest. I thought it was really well made. I mean, there are parts of it that are corny, because sorry, Peter, you're the TOS guy.
No, I was just going to say there's one thing that we do need to leave out in some fashion, is the repetitive singing from the
Lieutenant Riley. Yes. Yeah, that would be a great leave out. I agree with you. But again, I thought it was really well made for the time, and I think with our new cast, which is, I love some of the original series actors, but I think some of the ones that we've talked about can take those roles in different directions and show us kind of a different kind of drama. But what I really liked about this episode is it's one of the few where we have the entirety of our extended cast, meaning including Chapel and Rand, obviously minus Chekhov because he wasn't part of the show at the time. And it was, it was not long after. I can't remember which was the last episode Rand was in, but it was not even to the halfway point of the season. She just kind of went away, if I'm not mistaken. I'd have to look into it a little bit more deeply. So anyway, yeah, that's my pick number 1. All right, Jen, fire away.
My pick is What Are Little Girls Made Of? It's no secret I love Chapel, so I'm going to pick an episode that should have focused on her more. My rewrite on this one is going to focus on her more, because even though she's in it a lot, it's not really about her so much.
Yeah.
I would have her So what happens is the Enterprise receives a signal from Roger Corby, who is Chapel's ex-fiance, and they go down and they find out that he's been making androids, and he is an android. And from what we know of androids in Star Trek after this point, with all the Noonien Song and all of that, I'd incorporate sort of what we know from the future and have these androids maybe be the basis for Sung's work, or incorporate some of that somehow into this, because there's some really goofy stuff with the spinning table and the exposed wires in the hands, and it's not a good episode, and I think that's why it should be remade.
Right.
So I would do some of that to give Chapel more agency, have her maybe defy orders and go down to the planet herself because she wants to go see what's up with Roger.
Yeah.
Maybe have her bring along not just Kirk with her, but maybe La'an if she's still around, because that could be really interesting too.
Oh yeah, think about that.
And just kind of expand the roles a little bit more and give the women a little bit more agency.
Totally.
There's also the female android on the planet too, that there's a line in there where she's like, I am now programmed to bring you pleasure as well. And
oh
I'm
boy.
like, and she says this to Chapel, and I'm like, they could really play around with that too, because there's a throwaway about Chapel dating a woman at one point.
Right.
And I'm like,
yeah.
Okay, we could do something with this. Still implicit, we're not going to get crazy on the screen, but I think it could be a fun one to remake and see a little bit more interesting.
Awesome. Good deal. All right. Aaron, you're at bat.
All right, so my top pick, the one that I would really love to see get remade, is an episode that's the subject of a lot of fan speculation. And, I'm really big on getting into the lore and theories and stuff like that. But I would definitely love to see them touch upon the Squire of Gothos.
Ooh, yes.
They even in like Lower Decks and stuff like that, they mentioned Trelawney and that whole mystery thing. And there's been a lot of speculation and thought that he is in some way related to the Q continuum. And I think that would be a great opportunity to kind of put that to bed a little bit and explore his origins a little bit more, maybe from a different perspective. Plus it's a great opportunity to see some of our fan picks, Sulu and Kirk and Spock and McCoy all working together in a situation. And I just love the idea of maybe breaking the canon a little bit and playing with some new things, because if he is part of the Q continuum, or at least on that level, we could see the story maybe take some left turns and everything. And I think that would be really exciting to play with, because there's a lot of opportunity with a character like that.
Nice. Good deal. I love it. All right, Peter, the end of round one is yours.
My general philosophy was to stay away from like the big ones, because I didn't think they necessarily needed to be remade, but so I went with The Conscience of the King.
Oh God, great episode.
Which, if you're not familiar, this is an episode that heavily focuses on Kirk's backstory. And so we get the Kodos the Executioner, and this whole thing of Kirk surviving the slaughter of a colony, which, surprisingly, based on everyone's predilection for tragic backstories, has not been mentioned once in Strange New Worlds yet.
Yet.
So I would be interested to see how they would be able to, how they would bring that out and develop that. And as a side note, also deal with Kodos's daughter a little bit less weirdly.
Was she was her name Lenore? Was that like way too on the nose?
It was Lenore
for poetry and famous authors.
For Hamlet and all that. So it was a little too much, and she was a little bit too clingy and all that. Like hypersexualized,
talking about the throbbing engine.
There is that too. So it's like just deal with that character, make her a little bit more human and less stylized.
Right. Caricature.
Caricature. So build up that drama between Kirk and Kodos and make it a little bit less like, maybe not, and kind of have more of the, Kirk knows for sure. And there's a little bit more, maybe slightly more antagonism going on there. Cause there wasn't a whole lot of antagonism coming from Kodos. So either ramp up the antagonism or maybe focus more on the fact that Kodos is, repentant or something, or deal
Right.
with like that he's forgotten, or put some more depth into it.
Yeah.
So,
do you have and I know this is very off the cuff, but do you have an actor choice in mind for Kodos? It's okay if you don't, because I know I'm just throwing it right at you.
I don't, mostly because like the older actors that I can think of definitely are too expensive.
Yeah,
because my gut goes, Anthony Hopkins would be amazing, but
I mean that
one,
guy
he's
is
old. Two,
he's in everything, and he was just in. God, I watched that Zack Snyder, that new Rebel Moon, and he's in that as a voice actor. So it's just that guy. My God,
he just loves doing stuff.
He loves checks. He loves checks. I dig it. All right. Well, I'm going to bring it back around to myself, and I picked a cheat in more ways than one, and this probably won't be surprising, but I picked the Menagerie parts 1 and 2. And I said, now everybody, if you're not watching this on YouTube, I'm getting the stink eye from Jen in particular. But I picked it for reasons that are probably extraordinarily obvious, because again, I'm cheating, because I'm taking two.
You are.
I'm taking the 2, but you know what? I'm the boss. I do what I want. Sometimes it is good to be the king. Oh, it's good to be the king, conscious of the king with no conscience. Oh, there we go. Let me put that as the name of this episode here. So, the reason that
for them.
What's that? Say that again.
Context is for them.
King with no conscience. All right, I'll clean that up later. But anyway, I did have a legit reason, at least in my opinion, for picking it. It's the great episode within an episode. And I do love that meme out there that says, hey, only in Star Trek can you have guys sitting in front of a big TV watching an episode of Star Trek. Because that's really what the bulk of this 2-parter was about. This was a mid-season, because this was episodes, I didn't write it. I think it was like
15
17
and 16.
Yeah.
Not in air order, but
yeah. So we'll call it mid-season, because it was a 30-episode season. That they're like, hey, we shot this pilot that NBC, dumped on. They said it was too cerebral, but we still want to make something out of it. So it was shot in black and white. They colorized portions of it, or anybody correct my memory? Was it shot in color and then it was produced in black and white, or was it just originally? I don't remember what Turner Classic Movies did with it. It never saw the light of day until the late 80s, because there was a video cassette released of it that I had when I was a kid. So it was filmed with interview segments with Gene Roddenberry, that it was shot around the setting of the Enterprise from Star Trek 4, I think. So or Star Trek 3. So it was those sets. He was walking around the transporter set. He was walking around some of the corridors. So it was the TOS film era regardless. But it was the first time that we as normal people ever got to see it. But it tells, the introduction of, obviously, of a few of our Strange New Worlds characters, including Pike and Spock and Una, number 1. So this would have a chance to incorporate that. And of course, we're turning the clock back about 5 years from when we know them in Strange New Worlds, that everything within the cage the unaired pilot did happen. And that was actually touched upon in season 2 of Discovery, when we met Pike and so many of those characters again. So that you got Susan Oliver's character, Avina, was I think Melissa George from Alias, if I'm not mistaken, in Discovery. So you get to kind of revisit that, but you get to have some great Spock moments. You get to put Anson makeup in that terrible chair makeup, which, one beep for yes, 2 beeps for no. And the drama that kind of surrounds it. So yes, you know what? It's my cheat. I'm going to stand by it. It wouldn't be a cost saving for production because they have to film 2 different things. But whatever, I think it would be cool. And I love Anson Mount. Pike is my guy. So I'm going to stand by it. So there we go. Na 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 boo boo, stick your head in doo doo. That's my response. Jen, on to you.
I would like to see a take on Arena, knowing what we know now about the Gorn. I know we're a little bit tired of the Gorn as a main antagonist in Strange New Worlds. At least some of us are. I am not one of those people, though.
Mhm.
And I think it's really interesting what they've done with them, and to see kind of how they address the whole, we don't know what's going on here. We don't know who we're going up against, versus the things that we do know from Strange New Worlds, and to sort of reconcile the differences between what's presented in the original series and the new information that we have now. The updated special effects alone would be great. I mean, I know that
Mhm.
there's I know the guy in the rubber suit is iconic. So like
It's like
I don't want
Godzilla.
to yeah, like I don't want to mess with it too much, but like I think that I think what we're leading up to with Strange New Worlds and the Gorn is different you have different life stages of Gorn, different iterations, different like species of Gorn within their own species. So like I don't know, I just think that with more information there that could be really interesting, and I think redesigning the Metrons would also be a good thing to do there too, because that needs an update as well. I
Yeah.
mean, original series has its fair share of shiny silver togas, and kind of as a
I am Apollo. Dun dun dun.
yeah, you've got a lot of that, and I mean we're going to be coming up on more of that in seasons 2 and 3. But yeah, I think to sort of redesign that, I mean you wouldn't have to change too much about the story, depending on what we do learn about the Gorn now or later.
Right.
And it could also be really interesting too if seeing how this cliffhanger from season 2 resolves itself, if there's any sort of ideas of vengeance that someone might want to pull in from that, some of the people who are on Strange New Worlds now, to kind of see what they might think or say about what's going on here. What is Spock going to do or think in this particular case too? How does this affect kind of the characters that we already know? But mostly because I want to see how the updates with the Gorn.
Right. Get that guy out of that rubber suit. All right, Aaron.
Okay. So, first of all, I love that pick, Jen. I 100% agree with you on that. I didn't think of that for mine, but that was a great choice. The minute you said it, I was like, oh yeah. So
Yeah.
awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah. For my second pick, I'm a little bit torn about putting this one out there because it's already a classic episode. It's nearly perfect. It's nearly flawless, but it's also one that we have the potential to play with a little bit because it gets a little timey-wimey. I'm going to have to go with City on the Edge of Forever.
Ooh, tough choice.
Risky
Yeah.
choice.
I know.
Very risky.
I agree.
Yeah.
I know. I mean, that's iconic. It's a great episode, but it's one I think worth revisiting with our new cast because it's such a good character study. You know, you really get to see what that dynamic of Spock, McCoy, and Kirk are really made of, and it would be great to see what these new actors can bring to the role when they're really stripped down to the situation. Plus you have the Guardian of Forever, in its first canon appearance. And there's just so much that you could do there. Again, it's another episode where we have a lot of turn left potential moments, which is dangerous. It's dangerous to say, and I know I'm asking for trouble here, but I like playing with the formula a little bit, and I'd like to see what they could do. I especially love the idea with my casting of Misha Collins for my fan casting of Misha Collins for McCoy. I kind of like what he would do with that moment of the cortisone exposure.
Ooh.
Yeah. Thank you. And just that McCoy going crazy for the first half of the episode. I think that would be a lot of fun as an actor to
walk around
with
with
photos of him doing that kind of face. I think he could pull it off just fine.
Exactly.
Crazy
So
face.
yeah, I'm not gonna lie. That was my first and primary reason for picking this was Misha Collins. Yeah, exactly.
All right, everybody, count of 3. 1, 2, 3. Hopefully that'll be the grab box for uses for YouTube, but we'll see.
Oh boy.
Can I just interject
Great.
something about that pick? I just want to say, one of the things that Strange New Worlds is doing that I really like is real similar to some of the stuff that the MCU is doing compared to the comics. And that's taking something that's the spirit of the story, but putting a twist on it for those of us who are familiar with the canon that came before. And I think because we've had all this timey-wimey stuff in Strange New Worlds, it could be really interesting to see how a take on a very classic and very known story like City on the Edge of Forever could play out, where you would maybe have a very, the similar outcome in the end, but how you get there is different. So I think that could be a real interesting pick. I like that.
Awesome.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I totally agree.
Good deal. All right, Peter, take us home.
In the spirit of Strange New Worlds needing a quote-unquote dumb episode, I'm going with Shore Leave.
Oh,
That was my third pick.
oh, well, yeah. All right. Tell me why.
Mainly that first reason is we need some cheese.
It's got to be kind of
and-
like the musical episode, which, like it or not like it, a musical episode is meant to be fun
was
and
the
silly.
Elysian Kingdom
or
not
the
cheesy
episode in
enough?
season 1 with the
Yeah.
Elysian
Yeah.
Kingdom. That's
There you go.
more
Yeah.
where I'm leaning.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, I like it.
So, but because you have lots of like good character moments, lots of just ridiculous stupidity that is going on throughout this episode. I just think that it would be a lot of fun, especially because we have better special effects. You could like swap out some of the things that people see or add more things and just make it more obnoxious and more ridiculous.
Right.
And so I think there's just a lot of possibility with Shore Leave to just make it an absolute just ridiculous fun fest for both the actors and for us watching it.
That's cool. Good deal. And so
I love that.
yeah. So that makes me wonder. So if this is, if it's 5 years from now and Paramount Plus is going to produce it's, the reimagined TOS or whatever it is, and we get 10 episodes is the formula. So it would be very interesting to see what direction they would go in, creating new stories, maybe morphing some of these together or creating some, keeping it episodic or turning it into something that's a little bit more arc based. I'm fascinated, but I think that we've all come to the conclusion that this feels somewhat inevitable, that something like this will present itself in time, that we'll see Jen.
No,
with
I think
caveat.
what's more likely to happen is that they're going to take elements from the original series episodes and sort of merge and combine them rather than straight out remakes of episodes.
Okay.
You're going to have stuff that feels similar but isn't an exact one for one.
Okay.
Except in cases of iconic episodes like City on the Edge of Forever, probably.
Right. Gotcha. Very interesting. Well, this was awesome, you guys. Thanks for indulging me. And we're going to keep this train rolling in our next episode where we each jump into season 2. And as there are no more 2-parters, I won't pull my feint again. So I will faithfully pick something that is a single part episode. But I look forward to it. So this will be good.
That wasn't why I thought you were cheating. It wasn't the 2-part episode. It's that you said we couldn't do the cage. So
right,
it's a 3-way cheat. 1, it's the 2-parter. 2, it's the cage, and 3, it's getting Pike in there. It's just a 3-way cheat.
Fine. I got a real mutiny on my hands. It's okay. I'll allow it, and I'll allow it by moving on to segment 2. Oh, look at that segment. All right. Well, we're starting a new series this week, and I'm going to be handing a lot of the reins over to this program's #1 Star Trek Voyager fan, because we're getting into. Well, I didn't mean it quite like that. I'm not going to be like, all right, I'm going to go get coffee. Jen, take over from here. No, we're getting into season 4 of Star Trek Voyager, which, much like season 4 of Star Trek Deep Space Nine, which we wrapped up, it was, hey, the ratings are kind of shitty. We need to do something to pump them up. Shh, shh, shh. In this case, we got a pretty lady. Hey, look, it worked because the show got more popular. I go back and look at Nielsen's. I was watching it, I won't say the whole time, but I was watching it up until this point. So it didn't change things for me, and it may not have changed things for anybody else who's on this program who was already, look at Jen updated her background and everything. I like it. But it did obviously change the focus of the show because we got a new interesting character rooted amongst one of what becomes the most complex races within Star Trek as well. So I am talking about Jerry Ryan's portrayal of 7 of 9, and we're jumping into wrapping up the cliffhanger, which we talked about the first part of it many, many moons back when we were wrapping up season 3 of Star Trek Voyager way back when. But anyway, part 1 or episode 1 of what we're going to talk about is Scorpion Part 2. Director is Winrich Colby, stalwart of the series. We have Braga and Minosky doing the writing. So again, big episodes written by the big hitters. From September 3 of 1997, I remember watching this because again, I had re-engaged as a Voyager viewer later in the 3rd season. And then I tuned back in. I think actually the finale was one of those that I was like, oh my God, I'm back into it. And then so waiting, throughout that summer to get that wrapped up. But all right, the quick summary: Janeway and Tuvok work with the Borg and meet Seven of Nine as they collaborate on developing a weapon against species 8472 in exchange for safe passage through Borg space. Yeah, I'm inundated by my wonderful memories of how super cool I thought this was. New character, fresh blood, different direction for the show. I mean, again, early in season 3, I had kind of quit watching because I was like, they just, we didn't have a hook. I didn't have a super compelling drive to watching the show every week because I didn't find any one of the characters was really blowing my mind. And not to say that Seven came along and kind of her story, which becomes in particular a very big focus of season 4, is what turned the tables for me, but it did make things, in my opinion, more interesting. So I enjoyed this episode very much. Satisfactory cliffhanger. You get, and this tends to happen in a lot of cliffhangers, but Janeway, I said once that she was going rogue, and Jen said she wasn't going rogue. She was just doing what she does. And she was. She really, has to do a lot of standing alone. She and Chakotay come to odds because he doesn't want to pursue a collaboration with the Borg. He sees how dangerous it is. But at the end of the day, they end up collaborating, and it ends up, saving them when Seven turns out to be the Scorpion in the parable, where at the end of it, she still tries to double cross them, but they outsmart her. So, and at the end of it, boom, she's disconnected from the Borg and she's going to be part of the gang. Well, it doesn't happen quite that easily, but we said
it doesn't.
She becomes part of the regular cast.
She becomes part of the regular cast. I'm going to do this. I'm going to let Jen wrap things up because I'm sure she's going to have the most Voyager speak of all of us. So I'll go to my least Voyager person. That would be Peter, to get his take.
Ouch.
Oh, that wasn't an insult. It's just that's just to each their own. IDIC, my friend.
Okay. This was definitely a great episode for me. I was watching this well after the series was done. I didn't have access to be able to watch it while it was on. So like I knew what was going to happen. I knew the character introductions, but it was still very, very cool for me to see how 7 of 9 was brought onto the crew, actually seeing the collaboration between Voyager and the Borg, because originally, like, I heard that was going to happen. I was like, oh, this is going to be stupid. Because the Borg are essentially a force of nature. And so it's like, how are you going to ally yourself?
I'm going to collaborate.
Are you going to ally?
I'm going to collaborate with this tornado. Watch me.
Yeah. It's gonna, I mean, the result is the same. It's going to work out so swimmingly for you, but it was very interesting to see how they made that work and how they had to like use their just absolute, biological chaos to make sure that the Borg didn't take over the ship at the end. But I also thought like the way that they used species 8472 and this was really cool, and fluidic space and all of that. So there's a lot of cool concepts in this, especially adding like that element of this is so weird the Borg can't adapt to it quickly, and then bringing in the nanoprobes, which becomes such a big deal later on in the show and in First Contact and further Borg lore developments. So there's just a lot of really cool stuff in this episode.
Excellent. Good deal. Aaron.
Yeah, no, I don't want to mirror everything Peter said, but yeah, absolutely, 100%. I love the Borg, and this was such a great evolution of their storyline based on the changes made in the First Contact film in terms of their update with their technology and the Queen Mythos and everything, and the introduction of 7 of 9. I feel that she was a great character, and I enjoyed seeing her character progress throughout Voyager after this. But overall, yeah, solid episode. And of course, I always love the parable of the scorpion and the frog. I'm always quoting that to people. It comes up a lot more often in my life than I'd care to admit. But just really great tale, real great take on it, and some really great moments in this episode.
Cool. Good deal. All right, Jen, Voyagerize us up.
Oh, gosh. No pressure.
No pressure.
This episode continues where it left off as a great character piece for Janeway in particular, because it does show that she is going to do whatever it takes, but she's also going to do whatever it takes on her own terms. In particular, how she is not going to be assimilated by any, like, not even a little bit. Like, they're like, oh, it's just a little bit of assimilation, it'll be fine. And she's like, no, it's not. We're not going to do that. You're going to give us a speaker like you did with Locutus. And, Janeway in that sense created Seven of Nine in the way that she is now. So, the relationship between Janeway and Seven continues to evolve from here. And I mean, they do continue to butt heads and such. I mean, we'll see that as the series goes on. But I really like this for Janeway. I know that Cass is starting to kind of, she's getting her like extra special powers now too, that we're going to see her coming off the show. That's the next episode though. Everything just sort of blends together. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Yeah, this I was watching this when it first aired, and I was skeptical. I remained skeptical actually the first time I saw this, but I'm very happy to have been proven wrong, especially after the fact.
Yeah.
Seven really shook everything up, and she did it by being herself, being the individual that still longs for the collective. And, there's hands being held out to her and she refuses them. And, her whole thing about like, send me back. I don't belong here. She's doing what she can to want to go back and do things, the way that she feels like she's supposed to. It's a great introduction for her.
Yeah.
That's, shaking things up, and we'll see where it goes from here.
Shake and bake. All right. Well, speaking of, I'm going to toss you episode 2. Why don't you tip us off, and
right.
We'll roll from there. Go for it.
We've got The Gift, directed by Anson Williams,
Potsy!
written by Joe Menosky.
Sorry, he was Potsy on Happy Days. This is his later career. I kid you not.
Okay. Written by Joe Menosky, September 10th, 1997. Kess's mental abilities develop to a point where they endanger Voyager, while the Doctor and Janeway slowly help Seven of Nine cope with being severed from the Borg. Yeah, so this is the episode where Seven is like, you must send me back. I will not. You must comply. You must send me back. And Kess is starting to develop the telekinesis.
The force powers.
Yeah, it's like Kess is the one that actually does the work of severing Seven, at least in part, because she's telekinetically dissolving some of the Borg implants that are in Seven's brain. So that's doing part of it. The stuff with Kess is she's starting to like warp the ship. She's like ruining Tuvok's favorite lamp.
Rude.
And she's realizing that she has to leave. There's a lot of really, I know on the Delta Flyers they had covered this at one point when they were talking about how this was stuff that a lot of the actual actors were feeling when they were having the scenes with Cass. And it's palpable in watching this episode that they're all very sad to see Jennifer Lean go. So it's sad in that way, but the show must go on, and it goes on, and Cass leaves them with another jump in space closer to their destination. And yeah, meanwhile, Janeway and Seven are going on about like, you have to send me back. And Janeway's like, no, I'm not going to do that. You're going to stay here because you're not part of the collective anymore. And, the damage is already done at that point. So at the end of the episode, we have Seven looking more human. She still has her Borg implants, but she's not like full Borg anymore. But she does spend most of this episode full Borg.
Right. Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Because I thought that it had happened earlier, but it didn't.
Yeah. Most def. I'll sneak in here and then I'll kick it back to the rest of you guys. But the show must go on. I like that because it's a great analogy for this program. We've been on for 115 episodes, and I've rotated through a bunch of other people that have done it with me. And Axtra's needling me, says, "Hey man, one more switch and you ought to give it up." And no, I'll never. Frankly, I'll never give it up. I mean, if I end up getting down to the nub and you guys all desert me, I'll just be here talking to myself, because I also believe that you do have to soldier forward no matter what. If you have something that has hopefully even a small fan base, like I hope this show does, I'm happy to go on making it. So I don't know how I necessarily felt about the convenience of Kes, like, now I've got superpowers and they're super dangerous. It came a bit from season 2. Remember when actor Gary Graham guest starred in that episode where he was another member of the species, and she's like, "We can unlock your powers," and then we got bits and pieces of that. But all of a sudden, her experience with 8472 just quantum leaped her forward. Yes, it's convenient, I suppose, because it was an easy way to kind of get her out of the way. Maybe it'd been something that had been planned for longer than we know. I haven't done that much, deep digging into it.
She had been having some problems. She had not been well.
Yeah.
So there had been signs that she was not going to be the best fit for the show anymore. And it was not just a matter of replacing her
Yeah.
with someone. I think that she probably would have left the show regardless of whether they had a replacement or not, and who that replacement might have been.
Right. Gotcha. So, and I know that her life since then has been kind of a hard luck story, and that's unfortunate. And I hope that she finds peace in some way, shape, or form. But, as far as an episode of seeing, how it transitioned Seven into a member of the cast, it was done with a lot of, I think, a lot of skill with the way, like Jen was saying, they she was, I gotta go. And you know what, now, until, you can make you're not in your right frame of mind, this is, I'm going to make these decisions for you. And it does set the pace for their relationship as it continues throughout the rest of the series. It all starts here. So yeah, I was very impressed with this episode, if not like, oh, that was kind of convenient with the stuff with Kes, but it had to be something. And it was, even if it was a short run up, I think they kind of did it in the best way possible. But we lost another damn shuttlecraft, which when we see her back in season 6, she still has a different ship. So she could have at least brought that one back. I mean, come on, why does she need a ship in the first place? She's, she turns into whatever it is that she turns into. So anyway, all right, Peter.
I really liked how this episode, I mean, it's most of what's been said needs to be said has already been said, but I liked the I think it's Q's term, the deborgification of Seven.
Right. Like deboning a chicken.
Yeah. So it's just interesting to see like how, because like we saw like a little bit of that in Best of Both Worlds where they deborgified Picard.
Yeah, which was took 5 minutes.
Which didn't take that long. I mean,
he's good.
Been assimilated for, a couple days.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, as opposed to Seven when she was a child.
Right, yeah. And so she's got like implants that have been like grown around and adapted to and right. All of this stuff, which, gets brought up in this episode, which is quite interesting. So we get a little bit more in depth on how Borg assimilation works. We get to see the various stages of removing parts. So like, here's this implant gone, here's this implant gone. And you also see like how throughout it, Seven is like losing her connection to what she thinks is the most important part of her world.
Right.
And it's interesting to see how the character goes through that, and how she responds to it. Because it's not just like the destruction of her world, but it's also, they almost treat it like a withdrawal in a way, which I thought was an interesting take on how over time your mind adapts to the collective and everything, and almost becomes biologically dependent on it. So like having her character deal with that, so you can have those sorts of things, but not have it directly dealing with what we normally associate with withdrawal. So you can have it, it's there, it's present. You can have characters have to handle it, but not with the stigma attached, I suppose. So it was just,
I like that analogy a lot.
So it was interesting with how that worked. Kes leaving was, again, for me, I watched the show way later, so I already knew all of this was coming up. So it was a decent send off for the character, because it was like, okay, well, she has to leave, but we're replacing her, but we don't want it to be like abrupt. And I was glad that they didn't do what like some shows do of like, hey, we're replacing the character. What's the solution? We're gonna blow the other one up.
Yeah. She fell off a cliff.
Yeah.
So
Got
I
in a
was
shuttlecraft
happy,
accident.
you know,
Yeah.
I'm happy we didn't do a bridge on the captain moment with Kes.
Ouch. Oh man. Oh, rough stuff. All right, Aaron.
Yeah, again, I have to say, the best parts in this episode have already been covered, and I will preface this by saying I feel that in some ways I don't have a right to kind of criticize this episode because I didn't really watch Voyager back in the day, and I'm kind of catching up on it now after everything's been said and done. And I love all the actors. I think they did a great job, and I think they did a fantastic job in some cases with what they had to work with story wise. But I was kind of glad to see Kes leave. And I hate to say that. I feel very shallow saying that, and I hate that I'm saying that. But I found her character to be problematic at best sometimes, especially with her relationships with Neelix and everything like that.
Well, that's
Yeah.
true.
So I kind of felt like her leaving was just kind of like, in some ways, a breath of fresh air for me because she made me very uncomfortable.
Oh, boy.
And
Okay.
I'm sorry to say that. I really am. Like I said, nothing against the actress or the writers or anything like that. It just to me it was weird.
Man, oh man.
It was weird, and it was weird at the time too.
Mhm.
Yeah. Big time. Crazy. All right. Well, let's move it along. We'll give someone who's a big old lover of Klingons. That would be Peter. Give us episode 3.
Episode 3 is Day of Honor. B'Elanna tries to observe the Klingon Day of Honor after the warp core is lost.
Whoopsie. Very sitcom.
So yeah. Hang on. There we go. Just need to pull up stuff. So we get this is like one of the earlier episodes that actually deals with like a focus on B'Elanna as a
Right.
character. And while a lot of people are like, oh no, more Klingon stuff, it's you know, it's essential to her character, so it's important to have. It's also interesting how you have like B'Elanna is very different from how Worf is with celebrating Klingon holidays.
Because she hates everything.
Yeah.
She's like,
Just
Klingon
like-
stuff sucks.
Yeah, she's
Yeah.
just like, I don't really care.
Yeah.
She doesn't want to do it
Right.
necessarily. But like after a while, like, you know, she kind of comes around to it to an extent, which is again interesting. We have some more 7 of 9 character development. Her looking at her name. So I think this is also the episode where we get the more elements of the Paris and B'Elanna thing with them getting stuck out in spacesuits.
Right. Yeah, they
Yes.
get close as far as people get close to space because they have the "I love you," and then they're like, "Oh, the episode's over." So
They have to
yeah.
like save oxygen, so they're like
Yeah.
conserving it somehow by
no
think-
time for
or
love.
is it
Dr.
like
Jones.
Paris's
Yeah.
filter is dying, and so they have to reconnect. I don't
Right.
remember exactly. But you have a whole bunch of stuff where B'Elanna tries to like help fix an alien ship. It goes south, as you know, the Packlets have shown us back in TNG season 2. You know, trying to help people always goes wrong.
Right. Just don't help people. Just don't do it.
Yeah, it's the worst thing to do. But yeah, there's a lot of like back and forth between Torres and Paris, which, you know, for some of us, that's like, oh, look, they like each other because you're sarcastic and horrible to each other, and that's what that means.
Oh, that's love to some people, I guess.
Yeah. So, but anyway, there's just some good character stuff here, and seeing how B'Elanna's relationship to both her culture and then her relationship to her job, and then to Tom, kind of all gets tied around and looked at from various angles. It's an interesting episode.
It is, and like I said, and it's kind of a sitcom way because it's almost the kind of an Ally we feel like this is the worst day of my life, meow meow. But it still, again, really works out. And this one was written by Jerry Taylor, who co-created the series and,
Mhm.
as I bring up quite frequently, wrote the only two canonical Star Trek novels, which would be Janeway's backstory and the backstory of a lot of the other characters. And yes, we do get what has been building from the mid to late part of season 3, which is the growing friendship, will they, won't they, of Paris and Torres, which culminates not in this episode, but it at least takes its big quantum leap forward. So I like it, and we get our first occurrence of Seven having to deal with things on, because she's the one who's able to solve the problem at the end of the episode. But she's like, well, it's not, they're like, well, why didn't you mention this earlier? When she reveals whatever the hey, we can generate thorium isotopes for these aliens who are holding us hostage or whatever. And she's like, why didn't you tell us that earlier? And she's like, well, the Borg usually, don't do that kind of thing, but I'm not Borg anymore, so I guess I better start acting like a person. So, she takes little baby steps to being human, and I think that's pretty cool. We also get the very cool warp core ejection sequence of a ship at warp. That was pretty sweet. Yay! And then you do learn that the rumored second warp core that Voyager has is not a plug and play warp core. It's just bits and pieces that's stored elsewhere in the ship. But you see in the schematics that there's another warp core, but you can't just go and there we go and plug it back in. So because that would just be too easy. It's the same reason why we never see the Arrow shuttle. It'd be cool if we saw the Arrow shuttle, but it's postulated that the ship doesn't actually have one. They just have a piece of styrofoam stuck in there to hold place for it because it was getting installed on Tuesday. Womp womp. Aaron,
I've
you're
never actually seen anybody use the captain's yacht before.
No, never. No, well, you do an insurrection. You get to see the one on the Enterprise A.
And then lower decks.
Exactly. All right, Aaron, your thoughts.
I love this episode. It's another great. I'm such a sucker for the Zeppo episodes in some ways. Where you kind of just go on ground level with a character you not necessarily get to see focused on a lot, and just see the world from their perspective for a while. And that was a really great opportunity. But for my review, I really want to focus on the one scene where you've got Seven of Nine who's still integrating into the crew a lot. And there's this great scene where she's attempting to get along with B'Elanna. And B'Elanna decides to, let's just talk about the elephant in the room. She goes, do you feel guilt over everything that you've done? Well, not you specifically, nope. But you've experienced. Yeah, you experienced from the collective. And she's like, nope, not at all. I think that was such a great moment because in a lot of ways, B'Elanna, with her heritage, kind of feels a burden and a sense of guilt from being Klingon for all the things that they've done. And that kind of manifests itself in a form of self-hatred, for her heritage and everything like that. It was just kind of a fun contrast to see, someone who carries this burden, this weight with her in every decision she makes, contrasted with Seven of Nine, who's just like, nah, that wasn't me. Yeah. Yeah. Unsubscribe. I just thought that was a really cool moment.
I'd like to unsubscribe from the Borg, please.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Oh, good. My 7-day trial is not renewed. 0 7-day trial. Borg, oh, very good. All right, Jen.
Yeah, I like this episode. I like B'Elanna. I like looking into kind of what makes her tick and how that contrasts with everyone else. I especially like the comparisons between B'Elanna and Worf because Worf is the Klingoniest Klingon to ever Klingon, but he does it because of stuff he's read in books because he was adopted by humans, whereas B'Elanna is she's coming by it honestly despite being half human because she's raised on Earth, so they're seeing her as more Klingon than more human, so that's what she's going to kind of carry with her and identify with, but she has problems actually being proud of it at all because it's been such a source of pain for her in her life. It's the reason that she was teased as a kid. It's a burden for her to be Klingon. And the episode addresses, your burdens, like Aaron was saying, the episode, the scene between B'Elanna and Seven, where they're talking about, aren't you burdened? Shouldn't you be burdened? Shouldn't you feel guilty about this? The sort of sniping between her and Tom is how they show love to each other, though, because both of them, I don't know how much we've seen in the show so far about their pasts, but B'Elanna had a troubled past within her family. Tom had sort of a troubled past within his family too. Both of them don't really feel like their parents really care about them too much. So how do you show love when that's a thing that when you
don't
aren't sure
experience
that
very
you've
much,
been
yeah.
loved,
Yeah.
you by giving someone else attention, and that attention might be sniping and teasing and picking on each other. So it is kind of this like, you know, unloved kids finding love in each other, and that's a lot of what Voyager is in the long run when you really think about it. And I think that's great, but I see these themes that maybe not everyone sees because Voyager does have this big reset button at the end of every episode.
Yeah.
Um,
Ver-
but one of the things I like about this is that the relationship between Tom and B'Elanna does continue.
Right. Yeah.
You know, season 4 is when it starts to get a little bit more continuity, because you have character arcs. You can still, they're still very episodic, but
Right.
you can see things sort of building and flowing and changing.
Right. Which Strange New Worlds also
yeah.
does very well now, because you see
It does.
Spock and Chapel and how that grows and it ebbs and flows and grows and ebbs and flows. Look at that. Rhyming.
Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. Good deal. All right. Well, we've come upon, in my opinion, the first stinker of the season, and I'm going to give it to Aaron. Aaron, give us episode 4, please.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Oh, it was my pleasure.
Episode 4, Nemesis, directed by Alexander Singer, written by Kenneth Biller, and this originally premiered September 24th, 1997. Chakotay helps fight in an alien war.
Very descriptive.
Boring.
Yeah,
you were saying?
Yeah.
Oh man, yeah. I'll give my short and sweet. This 100% feels like it was a holdover script, because it doesn't incorporate any of the continuity that happened in the previous 3 episodes. There's no 7. There's no interaction. There's no continuation of the plot line between Tom and B'Elanna, which ended the previous episode. It's just like, oh, well, during this other time, Chakotay went to go find some rocks or whatever, and then he crashed, and then he's in the middle of this thing. And at the end of it, it's a big switcheroo, and it's just like, ugh. This was, I remember watching this thinking this was definitely a script that they're like, oh, we didn't squeeze this one into season 3, so let's just slide it in right now. And there's also a real weird scene in when they're getting ready to go. They're like, hey, we're ready to rescue him, and it's Tom and Tuvok and Janeway, and Tom's like, I'll be the one to go get him. Bam, let's do it. And I'm like, dude, go back and fly the ship and just get the hell out of here. It's just it's like a real weird moment, like a real out of character moment for Tom, who is not like, oh, well, Tuvok's the main badass, but I'm badass number 2. It just, nothing about this episode worked for me. It was dumb. Then you had the weird alien, like weird speak that like, oh, we're under the trunks and beside the thing and yada, yada, yada. It's just, oh, this was one was all over the place for me. And the place where it was Crap Town. Did not care for it. 0 stars, do not recommend. All right, Aaron, back to you, please.
Yeah, I gotta say, I'm gonna go a little bit off the rails here. Bear with me, I come back around. When I was in high school, I did this play called Charlie Brown. I'm sure you've heard of Charlie Brown.
You're a good man, Charlie Brown. I've done scenes from that in a variety of shows once in high school. Yeah.
Well, I played Charlie Brown, and there was this song that I had to do called "A Book Report on Peter Rabbit," and in it, he's trying to give his opinions on Peter Rabbit, and it ends up turning into talking about Robin Hood, which has nothing to do with the story that he's talking about. I'm going to do that for you now. So, this episode reminded me of this game franchise that I really love called Mass Effect. Which was a PlayStation classic. And one of the themes that I really enjoyed about that game that they explored was this concept of indoctrination. Mm-hmm. And this is where it comes back around. Yep. This episode was exploring those similar themes of indoctrination, and it was really interesting to see the breakdown and de-evolution of Chakotay's mind in this experience. And they did such a great job with the character slowly, almost not noticeably, changing his dialect over the course of the episode and starting to talk like his captors and everything, and mimic what they were doing. And if there was anything that was really good about this episode, I think that was a very subtle and excellent way of exploring that concept and kind of seeing that. So that's one of the good things I have to say about this episode. I think I'll probably leave it at that.
Smart. All right, we'll go Jen, and then we'll finish with Peter. Jen, go for it.
So this is a bad episode.
Yes.
I agree with that.
Okay.
I also agree with what Aaron has said, is that they were really trying to do something here. They're really trying to show how language changes people and it changes the way that you do think. And I get what they were trying to do. They didn't do it very well. And that's the thing, when you have a 26 episode season, you swing and miss at some points. Aaron hit on what I was gonna say,
Yeah.
so I'm good.
All right, Peter.
Yeah.
You get the scraps.
I mean, there's not a whole lot more to say. I do like the quote near the end where Chakotay says, "I wish it were as easy to stop hating as it was to start."
No, yeah, nailed it. That is, yeah, probably the best part of the episode.
Having been on the receiving end of that, I can definitely see how that's something that, some people need to hear more, if only because it's like, just because someone hates you, and like you reconcile, it's going to take a little while. And so, or if you hate something else and it takes a long while to turn around from that, that's just because of how human psychology works to an extent. And so it's like, there's the interesting thing at the end is that there's a little bit of a focus on like, yes, Chakotay was indoctrinated. And so he did, bad things, or he started to hate people because he was taught to do so. And so then he has to unlearn what he has learned, and that's going to take a while. And that's okay. It's going to be rough. It's going to be rough for everyone else. But the fact that they brought it up, I mean, it doesn't show up ever again. But
right.
But the fact that they mentioned it, I think, is something that was, that's a concept that I think could and should be explored in a different episode.
Yeah.
At some point.
Right.
So,
but it wasn't, which really made this feel that much more like a throwaway, So like a lot of Chakotay episodes, unfortunately.
It is unfortunate that they didn't really do much with Chakotay. I think a lot of that had to do with the fact that their consultant was a fraud.
Oh God, that's
so
right.
They couldn't do a lot with that.
So.
Yeah, I hadn't heard about that until years later. It was actually on this show that Kay, one of our other hosts, had mentioned that to me. I wasn't aware that happened at all. That was all news to me.
Beside that point, I think that they deal with this theme a lot with Seven over the course of the series, really. So this episode with Chakotay is an encapsulation in a way of that, and they kind of addressed that with B'Elanna in the last episode too. It's about culture and how you embrace or don't the culture, and what you're the culture that you come from, how that affects you, and the way that you interact with other people and how other people perceive you. And I know that with this episode in particular, Chakotay was really only with these people for, a short amount of time, especially compared to growing up in a culture, which, the others, it is, growing up within a culture. I don't know. I think there is something more to say here. But it happens throughout the rest of the season with a theme of this chunk of episodes, rather than, this one was just, it was ineffective in a lot of ways.
That's fair. That's fair. No, I totally agree. All right, I'm going to jump on episode 5, which gives us a great co-star or a great, guest starring character actor that I'm super happy with. Episode 5 is Revulsion, directed by Ken Biller. Lisa Klink, who was emerging in the writing room at this time and becomes a very big part, certainly as the series goes on. And I know that she's been on the Delta Flyers with Robbie and Garrett as well, so she's still out there. From October of '97, a hologram contacts Voyager, and the Doctor is excited to meet another hologram. Again, I got to start importing better descriptions because these are really bad. I usually take my big pull from Wikipedia, and then I'll do better because this doesn't really spark much conversation. But anyway, our guest hologram is Leland Orser, who is that guy that you've seen in absolutely anything to this day. I know most recently he was on the televised adaptation of American Gigolo, which John Bernthal was the main character in that. And he was the husband of he was a husband character, a scumbag in that. So, but always just plays a weirdo or a creep or somebody who's perhaps disreputable or just overall kind of creepy and scary. And he does that really good in this episode. But my favorite part of this is the opening sequence, which is Tuvok's promotion luncheon, and reminds me just why I love Tim Russ so much. I met him only extraordinarily briefly myself at Star Trek Las Vegas, because one of my biggest gripes about the creation in their con is that the vast majority of the actors who are there are paywalled. You're only going to see them if you do an autograph or a photo op, and that is not my thing. Respect people that enjoy that, but I'm not one of them. So I never got to meet Tim Russ except when he was walking to his panel. It was the very last day, and I said, "Mr. Russ," and he looked over at me and gave me a very Tuvok-like kind of grimace. And I thought, oh, I'll take that as my interaction with Tim Russ. I like that. But I love that he says, "Yes, in my 4 years on Voyager, I have come to respect a great number of you. Others I have learned to tolerate." And that elicited a chuckle from
It's a
Tom and
very
Harry.
Bilbo moment.
But yeah, it was great, and I enjoyed the Tuvok character. I would put him up there as certainly my favorite of the original cast from the beginning. I enjoy his portrayal very much. And then Jen and I also got to enjoy him on a recent episode of Sequest that we talked about over on our Patreon.
Yes.
So jump back and listen to that, because he was really great. As was it Minecraft? Mycroft? Was
Mycroft.
Minecraft on that. But yeah, I like this. Great, yeah, Minecraft. Great Doctor episode, because you got to, for all his griping about everybody treats me like crap and blah 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 blah, he gets to meet this other hologram that has it a lot worse than he does. Plus his matrix is unstable. He's homicidal. He killed everybody on his ship. But the Doctor, absolutely wants to give him the benefit of the doubt, because, kindred spirits, right? But in the end of it, it turns into a, hey, the bad guy, it's one of those, like in a horror movie where the bad guy's not really dead. Shoot him one more time, because they thought they had erased him, but then he came back, and he's, so. Yeah, I enjoy this episode. Plus, we get a satisfactory conclusion of what happened 2 episodes ago with Tom and B'Elanna's love declaration, and they get the big smooch. And yeah, I liked this episode. I remember seeing it the first time and being like, "Yay, romance!" I think I was single at the time, so yay, romance. I wish it was me. But yeah, I like this episode. Jen.
I think that this is going to actually continue that theme, because you have the other hologram, coming up with his prejudices that are sort of based in, again, the culture that he grows up in and how he's treated as a hologram. And in a way, it sort of sets off some of the stuff that happens with the Doctor later, and his kind of, liberate the photonics stuff. It's a good seed for some of that. It is a good episode. It's an interesting episode. I also really like the Tom and B'Elanna of it and Tuvok's promotion. Not really much more to say about it. It's a solid episode. It has some stuff that you don't really see coming, and then it does happen, like with the just everything being holographic for the other guy. That was kind of a neat twist.
Yeah.
There. Yeah. So next.
Good deal, Peter.
Another interesting episode with the Doctor. You see these points come up more later with all of the hologram liberation stuff in later seasons. So I don't think this is necessarily the seminal moment for that. But it's interesting how, like, he's starting to do the I'm unappreciated, taking advantage of all that. And so it's interesting for him to be like, "Oh, this is so horrible," and then he's like, "Oh, this one's so much worse," and then also he's so much worse. So it's interesting to see that juxtaposition, but also like those. Again, I don't remember if this is the moment, but it's like those seeds are planted in the Doctor so that you get holographic rights and all that stuff later.
Right. Yeah. It kind of starts that ball rolling. Yeah, that happens definitely later.
That's way down the road. But
yeah.
But just like the fact that this is here.
Yeah.
We also get some more Ensign Kim bashing.
Yeah, right.
Poor Harry Kim.
Poor guy. He just like. you get what's going on, but it's like, man, that
Can I have it?
just
Just to have
sucks.
Yeah. Oh god. Yeah. I didn't even touch on that. The whole subplot with this is the one with it's the whole subplot with him and he's kind of crushing on
He's crushing.
Seven.
Like, I mean,
because she's a
in the
proxy
office
lady.
sort of
Yeah.
deal. And he's like, oh, she's
Yeah.
kind of nice. And then she's like, I have seen how you watch me, and all this
Like,
stuff. It's very.
Yeah. She's basically
she doesn't know how social cues work, so it's like it's understandable, but it's just it's like, man, Kim has to be the whipping horse for this one again.
He is. He's the O'Brien of this show because a lot of bad stuff happens to him. You know, it's this and
he still never gets that promotion.
He never gets that hollow pip. That poor guy. Tisk. All right, Aaron.
I mean, I think you've all really touched on some of the best talking points. But I will say that this is another example of Star Trek, pardon the pun, not being afraid to delve into horror elements. And really kind of explore that, and I really appreciate and I love that, because with this character of this hologram just really giving off some serial killer vibes in a lot of ways, and alluding to some concepts of deeper, darker abuse and everything that he'd gone through to make him the monster he is in this episode. It's just really a great use of science fiction horror at its finest, I think, in a lot of ways.
Cool. Good deal. I like it. All right. Well, we're moving on to a pretty pivotal 7 of 9 episode, which I will give to my favorite of 7 of 9 cosplayer in the whole wide world, Jen Watson.
All right. Episode 6 is The Raven, directed by LeVar Burton.
Woo!
Teleplay by Brian Fuller. Story by Brian Fuller and Harry Clore. 7 of 9 experiences Borg flashbacks as she attempts to become more human.
That's a weird description, but whatever.
But that's what happens.
Accurate.
That's true.
I mean,
That's true.
You know, it's accurate. I mean, I like this. Of course, it's a 7 episode, so I am going to be a little bit biased here, but I think that this is a really good example of the metaphor that Peter used that I hadn't actually heard described before, of the Borg collective being more like an addiction, because you have her going through some of these sort of withdrawal symptoms. You have her still wanting to be part of the collective and comparing what it means to be part of the collective versus being an individual. And these flashbacks that she has of her past while she's trying to become more human. It's a great character piece for her. Sorry, buffering for a second there.
Do you want to circle back?
Yeah, let's circle
All
back.
right, that's cool. All right, Peter, jump on.
I actually forgot that this episode was this early in the season.
Mm-hmm.
I thought
it does seem pretty early. Yeah,
it was a little bit later. But I really like this episode where we're getting some of Seven's latent memories back, where like we were told in Scorpion Part 2 or the next one, The Gift, that she was assimilated as a child, and we're like, okay, well, how early was that? What was going on? Why would a human be assimilated as a child? And so we get some of that explanation here. Her parents are in my humble opinion, somewhat boneheadedly chasing a Borg cube.
Oh my God. And that really gets next season I think it's a Dark Frontier 2-parter, really gets broken down. They're morons. I hope we meet the Borg. It's, oh my God, what is wrong with you
if
people?
You look at the timing though of when that must have happened, the Borg are still an unknown quantity.
Yeah,
they're an unknown entity at that point. They don't know what they're pursuing.
It's after we see the colonies scooped up in early TNG, but it's before, and it's after it's before Best of Both Worlds, but it's after the Enterprise meets them. So they know who they are, but they don't know anything else.
It's such a hugely unknown quantity, so it is something for them.
So again, for us, it's very boneheaded. They don't necessarily think it is, but as an outside viewer, that theatrical irony, we're sitting
like, no, don't do that.
Very dumb.
Yeah, you're very dumb.
And as you know, as we mentioned with previously, the force of nature, you know, you mess with a tornado, it ends swimmingly.
Right. Go watch Twister and that cow. Don't be that cow.
Yeah. So, but it's interesting to see how Seven like re-experiences how that trauma comes back up, and like this is a character thing that like continues with her dealing with that, but how we get to see that, how we get to see how like she did have a family that did care for her, that did love her, but there's just something, this horrible thing that happened,
Right.
that with the Borg, and how all of that pans out. Let me check the note here. So, and I think it's also interesting how like we get some of that flashback before they even find the ship, and then you find the ship, and then the rest of it all starts to come out.
Right.
So I think this is also one of the first parts where we get Janeway's obsession with Leonardo da Vinci brought in, which is the fun side note.
Right. Yeah. But it's a such more regular part of season 4, which kind of peters out eventually.
Yeah,
No
but
pun
it's just one of those fun little, you know, character.
Right.
It's not a tick, but it's like a thing about the character that's just a fun little element that comes in, becomes a thing, and then we move up. Then we develop other things, so she doesn't become a one-trick pony. But
yeah,
it's just,
right.
I enjoy her whole thing with Leonardo da Vinci, so it's just funny for me to see like, oh look, here it is.
Yeah, right. I'll jump in. I'll toss to Aaron, and then we'll let Jen. Now that Jen is hopefully properly buffered, she can finish us up.
Yeah.
But, let's see here. So yeah, I thought this was also pretty great. And again, yeah, it did seem early, but it doesn't leave us like, okay, now Seven's story is over, and there's still more in her background, and we do get a more fuller detailing of that, as I said, in season 5. But I love that, you know, and what a cool way to integrate it. You know, they're passing through this piece of space with this super obnoxious alien that they're like, well, we'll let you pass through our space and it'll save you 3 months, where I'm like, you know, I'll take, you know, they end up taking the 3 months after all, because these aliens are so obnoxious. And then of course it's a comedy of errors that, you know, Seven's Borg overloads, and then she kidnaps Tuvok, and she has to go follow the signal. And these aliens are like, we really see this is a Borg invasion, and blah, blah, blah. Like, these people are just like, oh my, we'll take the 3 months, you know, we'll take the 3 months staying in our head rather than having to deal with you people. But yeah, I love it. And I love how they kind of bring it full circle, but leave it a little bit more open to more, you know, character exploration as time goes on. So so I really enjoyed this one very much. So Aaron.
Well, I agree with Peter in that it's hard to talk about this episode and not want to talk about Dark Frontier.
Right.
You know, again, we have the benefit of hindsight on that. But you know, you want to talk about the, you know, the recipients of the Parents of the Century Award. But but no, I love the use of the visuals in this episode with the hallucination of the Raven, and the payoff for that later in the episode being that's the, you know, the name of the ship and everything, and seeing the conflict with 7 of 9 trying to resolve her new life as a member of the crew versus the only thing she's really known for most of her existence being part of the collective. I love breaking that apart, you know, of really getting this truly alien mentality, ironically from a human, and seeing that attempt at integration. And then at the end, her deciding to, it's not time, she's not ready, which in some ways it's like you want her to go for it, you want her to embrace her past and learn the truth, but at the same time you have to stand back and appreciate the fact that at least she's mature enough to know she's not ready.
Yeah.
You know,
right.
So that's hard to do for a lot of people, and that's a moment of strength from this character that I really appreciated.
Oh, Steph. All right, Jen, you've buffered, you're ready, you're prepared.
Yeah, I'm good. It's not like flipping a switch, right? It's not like you just take out all the Borg parts and suddenly she's human,
right?
Because there is trauma to deal with, and it's almost like by deborging her, you get the memories are like the last memories that she has before she was assimilated, so she is reverting back to that moment again, and it's in her unconscious, and that's why it's coming back as, you know, the the hallucination of the Raven, because she doesn't know that's the name of the ship. She knows it's the name of the ship, but she doesn't know. Added to that, the homing beacon that she has, and it just becomes this big kind of trauma stew sort of in her head where she's trying to cope with something that she doesn't know what she's trying to cope with, and it promises that there is more to come. Like you said, there's she's not ready to deal with it, but she will deal with it. At this point in the show, we don't know how. We don't know that she will. But it's huge to see her past kind of come to resurface in her own mind and in the wreckage that they find as well at the same time. So
totally excellent. Good deal. All right, I'm going to take us home with episode 7. Scientific Method, David Livingston directing, teleplay by Lisa Klink, and story by Sherry Klein and Harry Clore. Second time I've seen his name, first time I've seen hers, so I don't know him, but must have been writers on the staff at that time. From October of 97, the crew have unexplained illnesses as they are closely observed by unseen intruders. I thought this one was pretty darned interesting, to be honest with you. So we're getting more Tom and B'Elanna, but they're running around like a couple of school kids. Oh, hey, it's the middle of the day. Let's make out on the upper rail of the warp core. And Tuvok walks in on him, and then Tom chases him down like, dude, come on. You can't say anything to me about me making out with my girlfriend in the middle of a room where there's everybody whenever it is. And so you watch Janeway, look like, mom of a 2-year-old with her hair all frizzy, and she's not sleeping, super stressed out. And then, but then really weird things happen. And of course, Chakotay turns into like an 80-year-old man overnight, and different people are having weird sicknesses. And yeah, this turns into a big allegory about, basically lab rat animal experimentation, which Janeway then says to this the leader of these aliens that are able to cloak themselves and do all these weird experiments because in what becomes a big trope of the series, the doctor is able to do something to one of Seven's implants, and then she's able to save the day and see all these unseen aliens. But yeah, this is classic Janeway. At the end of it, she resolves it by, I'm just going to run the ship into a star, and if you don't F off, then you're going to die with us too, so enjoy. And it's great because in that shot, as they're finally getting close to the star at the end of it, you see that the aliens retreat. There's 2 ships, and one of them gets blown up, so I'm like, yes! Totally worked. Janeway is you. Janeway 1, bad guy 0.
Janeway has Janeway'd the villains.
Yes. That's almost a better name for the episode. We might have to go with that.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, all right. I'll swap that out while Peter, having earned honors, gets to go next.
I actually don't have a whole lot to add about this episode. I do enjoy where you get the viewpoint of the aliens as they're viewing everybody, while you get that you're trying to figure out what's going on. You do know more than the characters, but at the same time, it's just I don't have a whole lot to add on it. It's just they're getting looked at and things are horrible. And
did have that sweet grab though. All right, Aaron, how about you?
This is one of those episodes of Star Trek that I really like because it's Star Trek is not afraid to take concepts and ideas from other series in its catalog and kind of re-explore them in a different way. That this episode reminded me very much of the TNG episode Schisms.
Yep.
Where they were. Yeah, they were dealing with the alien abduction phenomenon in that episode. And in that particular episode, the TNG crew sciences their way out of trouble. And in this one, Janeway's them. It's a different solution, and that's one of the things that I love so much about Star Trek is the diversity of opinions and ideas, and seeing the way different captains might find different solutions for the same problems, and that's revisited time and time again. And I love that, and I really appreciate that in this episode.
And Enterprise even revisits this to an extent when you have the aliens that are observing the
observer effect season 4,
totally different, and they don't really have any sort of big confrontation in the end, but it's a similar Again,
Right.
just going back
Yeah.
to your idea of Star Trek recycles plots to see how different characters handle them. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
And sometimes it can really pay off. Like I really feel like it did in this one. All right, Jen, take us home before we pick our favorites and leasts.
I like that this one is the Seven and the Doctor are the ones who are sort of immune to the effects of what the aliens are doing. So because of, him being a hologram and her implants still affecting how she's perceived or what she is perceiving. So this is one of the first instances of them working together, and it's kind of the start of their friendship, unintentionally,
Mhm.
of course, but because they can work together in that way, works for both of them.
Right.
I love Tom and Balana also just sort of going, oh, let's just jump on each other. Why not?
Sure. It's
Like
cool.
kind of what happened with the blood fever where they were gonna and then didn't,
Yeah.
and now they're totally free to do
It's
that.
blood fever
So,
catch-up day.
yeah. Yeah,
Oh,
but it's a fun one. It's
yeah.
a neat sci-fi concept. I like it.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Most def. Cool. All right. Well, that is the first 7 episodes of season 4 of Star Trek Voyager. Let's pick a favorite, and then we'll pick a least favorite, and we will start with Aaron.
I'm going to go basic Borg on this one. My favorite was Scorpion, part 2. I love Scorpion.
Me too. And what about a least?
Nemesis.
I will
Yeah.
save some time and say that I'm in the exact same spot. Yep, I love big Borg kaboomies, and the Nemesis was just like, hey, we got a script, we got to sneak something in, so here's a script we're sneaking in. You're welcome. So, Peter.
Just to be a little different, I'm going to say that my favorite is The Gift, because I like the way that Seven is dealing with the becoming more human, and how Kes is, how the character departs in a not so explosive manner.
Boom.
So just how that, I like how the characters are handled in that episode, and so for that reason, I'll say that one's my favorite, and also because it still deals with the Borg elements, but isn't Scorpion.
Right. Excellent. Very good. Awesome. All right, Jen.
Also, The Gift is a favorite for a lot of the same reasons, that it is more character driven than big boom explosion driven.
Explosionary.
Yeah. And I mean, that's fine. Everybody likes different things and has different reasons for liking what they like. I'm here for the characters and their motivations and where that's going. And Gift has, I mean, great stuff for Cass leaving, but also really, really, really great stuff for Seven and Janeway, and where that keeps going and how they clash and where that goes. So I like that, and obviously Nemesis is my least favorite.
Come on now. Exactly correct.
Yep.
Oh, good deal. Well, cool.
Basically, they shouldn't name Star Trek things Nemesis. It just doesn't end
Right.
well.
Yeah.
Evidently not.
Hopefully we won't get a third time's the charm with that, and they'll be like, oh, and here's a season 5 episode of Discovery.
No,
called
they just need
Nemesis.
to add a the at the beginning and see what
or add something,
changes.
call it Nemesis of the Week. Maybe that'll make it great. So Nemesis of the Week, Ship of the Week, whatever it is. All right, well, that wraps us up, guys. Thank you for joining us for this coincidentally very special Christmas episode of Code 47. Peter, where do people find you out there in the world? Hey, there's the hat. All right, people, where do people find you out there?
You can find me around the internets at Petrus Aquinas. As I've said before, I usually don't do a whole lot or say things. I made a horrible Millennium Falcon joke and no one responded. So that's usually what I do, is not say things, or when I do, no one notices. But if you say something to me, I might respond, usually on the Discord. So
Yes, always the Discord. Definitely our Secret Friends Unite Discord is definitely a hot spot to be at. Aaron.
Yeah, you can find me at USS Rhapsody on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram. And you can also find my other cosplay team of GBMI, Ghostbusters Michigan, at GBMI Michigan on Facebook and on Instagram and YouTube.
Awesome. I also have a link to Aaron's link tree in the show notes, as I do for Jen. Sorry to steal your thunder, but Jen, where do people find you?
I've got a link tree. That is linktree.com/Jen Watson Art. There you will find links to my Etsy shop, still on vacation, my Instagram, my Facebook. I am also now on Threads. I have not done much with it, but I am there. So if you want to say something to me, you can say it there. I might see it if I can figure out how to work the thing. And also a link to my author page on Screen Rant, where I am on the Star Trek team.
Woohoo! I love it. I also am on Threads, and Jen, I'll go find you on Threads once I know that you can see it. But yeah, that's primarily where I'm at. I've abandoned X long ago, and I'm on Threads and also Instagram as C3 Carpenter. Go ahead and spell it out. And of course, Secret Friends Unite is also on Threads. But myself and Peter and Aaron, we are all part of SFI, but Peter and I are part of the USS Grand Petoskey that my wife April and I run. We're based here in West Michigan, one of the biggest chapters of the International Star Trek Fan Club in the world. We are always looking to have more people come on over and see what we're up to. If you go to sfi.org or grandpetoskey.com, or just give us a big googs, drop a line. I also run Region 13, which is Michigan and Eastern Canada. So if you're a trekker out that way and would like to learn more, hit us up, and we would love to have you on board. So with that, friends, as always, thank you for joining us. I'm going to tell you that sharing is caring, and to keep on trekking.
Be the Starfleet you wish to see in the world.
Peace and long life.
I got one this week. Believe it or not, this is my high school yearbook quote. Always remember, 1,000 stars, a million maybes.
This podcast is part of the Secret Friends Unite podcasting network. Visit secretfriendsunite.com for more great shows, articles, news, reviews, and more. Secret Friends Unite podcasts are available on Apple, Google, Spotify, and other podcast services around the world. If you'd like to be part of the conversation, you can join us on Facebook or our new Discord server, or follow @SecretFriendsU on Twitter. Please subscribe to Secret Friends Unite on YouTube and visit our merch store at tpublic.com. Just search Secret Friends Unite. Thanks for listening.